Hello, everyone. Just to introduce myself, my name is Avril and I work in the BDA. And today we're here at a really special date in the year. Today, the BDA is 135 years old. This is our anniversary, and it's a momentous occasion. So we thought it was really important to take the opportunity to bring in some really important guests who'll help us reflect on the work of the BDA. So we're going to look at the BDA history over the past 135 years. We've got some fantastic guests who are going to come and talk to us about their experience. And those of you who are watching, I hope you really enjoy. I'm sure it'll bring back some really special memories for you. Please do feel free to join in the comments section. Please ensure that any comments are relevant to our celebration tonight, our 135th anniversary. Let's keep it focused on that and no other topics. Really looking forward to the chat tonight, a really warm, positive time where we come together and share some memories. First of all, we have a lot of different people joining tonight who I'll be talking to. We'll tend to spend about 5 or 10 minutes with each person. You'll see them appearing on screen. We have a few people who weren't able to make it, and some of them have sent us some videos, and we've lots of photographs to share with you this evening. I hope we can get it all done in an hour. We may drift on a little bit past that. As you know, as a community, we love to chat, so I think it's going to be a great session. Before we do get into that, let's have a look at the BDA over time. Here we go. Weren't those some fantastic photographs? Those were from the exhibition that was held in Leeds at our recent celebration that was held in Leeds just there recently. So we have some guests who are going to come along this evening and tell us some of their experiences with the BDA. And the first person I'd like to join us is Lillian Lawson. Lillian, you're really welcome. Join us.
Hi, everyone.
It is lovely to see you. Thank you so much for your time and coming along this evening. First of all, introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
So, as you said, I'm Lillian Lawson. I'm from Glasgow, here in Scotland.
And tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the BDA. It's our 135th anniversary. Tell us a little bit about your experiences, and we'd love you to talk about your husband, Jock, as well.
Of course, well, I joined the BDA staff in the Carlisle office. That was 1981 in December. Wow. And I worked in administration, advice, and made my way up that BDA ladder. I worked there for about 11 years, left there in 1992, and looking back, I had such a happy time working for the BDA. During that time, I would say probably about 1988, 2 years prior to the 100th centenary celebrations, I was working within, in that office, and somebody had given me extra responsibilities to organise events and so on. So I was looking at different venues. So that was from the January to December of that year to celebrate 100 years of the BDA. So we looked to different branches of the BDA and looked at the celebrations that they would organise. So there was a lot of events, a lot of exciting events that were held during that year. And yeah, it was such a fantastic time. I remember now when I look back, what a great time I had.
You mentioned about the 100th centenary celebrations in Brighton. Did you have any special guests? Anybody come in who was maybe royalty?
Yeah, you're right. In Brighton that year, yeah, of course, we had the Congress there. And it was around about August, and we'd organised various events. Various speakers came in. There was a youth programme, for example. There was people like the Over 60s Club. They came in. They had bingo, and in the afternoon they had a tea dance and so on. So it was really lovely. The young people themselves wanted to do sport, so it was a lot to manage. We had camping. There was a lot of people staying over. It was a really fantastic time, but so much work, so much to manage. Um, there was actually a few of us who didn't know about, obviously, that day Princess Diana would come herself. She was patron, of course, of the BDA back then, and we had many people there. And in she walked. I was with my husband, Jock, and we were on stage, and she came up on stage with us. And of course, the publication of the dictionary had been carried out, and she stood up herself and signed to the audience to congratulate the BDA on their 100th year. And people were aghast, they couldn't believe it, that she'd learned to sign in her own time, and had stood up and done that for us. And there was so many media, newspapers there. It was such a boon for us in terms of profile. It really raised our profile. People wanted to learn BSL, I think, as a result of her involvement. So it was really lovely. I think we had about 40 volunteers plus staff there at the time. Yeah, it was so well organised though. Worked like clockwork. And looking back, I think that was probably one of the best events that at least I've been involved in organising.
And you were at the
Yeah,
season.
yeah, we were in Brighton, so the weather was lovely, which was great.
And I remember that actually it was such a fantastic event, because after that, BSL became much more popular as a subject. People wanted to learn it.
Yeah, it certainly did.
Her husband, Jock, tell us a little bit about him and how he got involved in the BDA.
Yeah, well, Jock obviously got involved in the BDA. He was a member initially. He was involved in the branch. And yeah, one day he was invited to be elected within the Executive Council back then. And so he got heavily involved in it. And I think one day, really, we just didn't expect it. I think it was all underhanded, and Terry Riley was there, and various other people had a discussion, and they said, you know what, we want a deaf chair. So they agreed to appoint Jock as chair. So that was the first deaf chair of the BDA. So he was introduced at the Congress. Where was it about again? Yeah,
yeah.
I think, yeah. So it was lovely, actually. For him to be involved in that. He did it for several years. And I think people really had confidence in his ability to chair, to be fair, to treat people well, with dignity and fairness. And yeah, we had so much fun during that time, I have to say. I was really proud of Jock and what he achieved.
And not only that, but he was a founder member of the EUD as well, wasn't he?
He was, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes,
I think it was Arthur as well.
Arthur Verney, yes, I remember that.
Yeah, Arthur, that's right. And I think at that time, there'd been a discussion with Jock. I think at that time, the economy was changing, obviously, in terms of the currency. And I think there was a lot of projects in Europe. It seemed there wasn't a lot happening. They wanted us to work together. So Arthur and Jock said, okay, we'll go to Europe. We'll visit France, Italy, Belgium, Holland, and we'll just have a discussion with them and see what they think. And yeah, so I think, was it March 1984? There was a meeting held in London, and everyone came together. The European fellows came together, and they had a discussion and agreed to establish the EUD. So that was the start. Yeah, absolutely. So again, he was an honorary chair. What's it now? I'm trying to think. Was it 91, 92, something like that? Yeah.
What an achievement. And so I think 2 OBEs in the family after that too. So both yourself, Lillian,
Yeah.
and Jock have really worked so hard on behalf of the BDA, and we're very much appreciative of that. I think it's time to show some photos of yourself in previous years.
Yeah, I remember that. I'll never forget that night. It's so lovely.
You haven't changed a bit.
Oh, my hair's a bit greyer, I think.
Okay, so there's yourself and Jock. Who was the other woman who was there beside Princess Di? Who was that?
Oh, you'd have to show me it again, actually. Oh,
Oh,
was it Liz?
it was
Oh, it
Liz.
was Liz Scott Gibson.
There
Yeah, of course. Yeah, she was always Jock's interpreter. She worked also at the EUD and um, Sheila Hay as well, I think. So often went with Jock, yeah, to Europe and so on. So we had various regular interpreters, but Liz worked with them a lot and worked with Jock. So yeah, lovely, lovely memories.
And have you any last comments that you'd like to make in relation to the BDA before your time finishes here with us?
Well, obviously, just to say that the conference at the weekend was so lovely. It was lovely to see so many nice friends again, and it's very diverse as well. It was lovely, and I really hope to encourage that in the future as well with the BDA. It was a great time had by all, I'm sure, at the weekend. We've had 135 years now. That's something to be really proud of, and I'm sure we've achieved so much in that time, and I hope we'll carry on for another 135 years for sure. So thank you so much.
Indeed, we all do. And thank you for all your memories and everything you shared over the past years. And thank you for your involvement. We really appreciate
Not
that.
at all. Thank you so much. Bye. Okay, now we're going to move on. That was really interesting with Lillian, actually. And before the next person, what I thought we'd do is we wanted to show some photos of previous chair, some photos of just the past, who's been involved in the BDA. So let's take a look. There we go. Wow, wasn't that lovely to look back and see our founding members? Of course, Francis McGinn. And not only him, there were actually four men involved in discussing and coming to that decision to establish what we now know as the BDA. So people from Ireland, Scotland, and two gentlemen from England. So that was lovely. Our founding members that established the BDDA. So it wasn't really Francis on his own. There were four in that group. And then to see the subsequent chairs who've come along. And I'm sure all the chairs have been so supportive to the organisation and allowed the BDA to thrive and steer that ship ahead during good times and bad times. Just to manage that through financial hardships as well, I'm sure. So I think we've been resolute in our aims, and it's lovely now to see who's also been CEOs in that time and managed those everyday situations and services. And I think everyone involved in the board and chair, CEO, and members, and everyone has been so fantastic to our success. Okay, let's think about who's coming next. Sylvia, welcome. Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, Avril.
Please introduce yourself and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Simmons, and I'm from Reading.
Lovely. So I know people will know you well. You've been involved in the BDA for many, many years, since you were a young child. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about your mum and dad and so on?
I joined through the Youth Council. There was a drama performance being held in 1974. There's even a poster of that. I can remember going along with my mum to this performance. And when I was there, I just thought, I was one of it because it was all done in sign language. In those days, there was a lot of finger spelling, but my parents, my mum would have helped out with serving the tea
The tea, yep.
and putting the sandwiches out, and my dad was on the committee. So I went to that performance with them. And then there was a guy called Frank Goodrich, who at that time was well known in church scene in Reading. And he was responsible for the dioceses in that area.
So do you mean in Reading? Yeah, yeah, okay.
Reading
Got you, in
South.
the church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he was the minister in charge of the diocese in that area. And he got involved in what was the BDA then. There was a pensions officer, welfare officer, and then the youth panel put a lot of attention on young people. And he asked me to get involved. Now, I then found out that he had baptized me when I was a baby, and being deaf, that was really important to me. So then at that time, it was the BDA, and I can remember trying to support other young people to get involved. And we did a lot of work around educating people about sign language. And then at that time, there was a lot of focus on education around the time of Terry Riley and Gloria Pullen, who were the president, the chairs at those stage. And, what happened was I was really encouraged to do things, really encouraged to get involved. And I can remember the centenary celebrations. And I was working alongside Peter Shaw.
Peter Shaw, yeah.
In those days, and Eva Fielding Jackson. And before that, in 1986, I had gone to the BDA Congress. And I'll never forget, there was a ferry strike around that time. And it was the first time I saw Terry Riley on his crutches, trying to help sort everybody out. And we took over the island that it was on. And there were only 6 or 7 young people. Everybody else was a lot older than us. And so I went to Jock and said, well, where's the youth representation here? And Jock then said, put a motion forward to Congress, get a resolution. And I remember Terry Riley and Gloria Pullen helping with that. And that went forward to the Executive Council. That was a motion that was passed. And then they put funding into a 3-year project in the Yorkshire area, Sheila Huff, and then it was setting up a youth training scheme that was funded.
Oh, wow.
History.
Wow. So you've strongly been involved in youth work then, and then, or you're on your own youth, and then, involved in the BDA. How many years do you think in that area of work?
In the BDA for 12 years with 3 different roles over that time.
Wow. And then you got involved in the board twice, 3 times. Wow, 3 times.
Yeah.
And then you've been a member, so you've never missed a congress, a meet. Is that right?
I missed a couple when my father was very ill at the stages with his dementia, and ever since I've been back. Yeah.
Wow. So obviously that's amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think what's been amazing has been to be part of a sign language community. I mean, it used to be that as deaf people, we had to be very, restrained in public, feel that we had to use lip reading, try and use speech, but society has changed this attitude. It's totally different now. It used to be that we held things back, we had to keep it behind the scenes, and we're so much more open about it now. And yet what I'm seeing nowadays is with our younger generation, I mean, I can remember just last weekend being in Leeds and seeing a young person of 18 another one at 19 who reminded me of what I felt like at Congress in my day. And that's the next generation coming through, and we want that generational activity to continue so that young people are really part of BDA.
Oh, that's so lovely that you were able to compare their experience to your younger experience as well. How lovely. Yeah. So let's have a look at some of the slides now, pictures that we have. Wow. Wow, cheap 25 pence. Wow, to get involved in a theatre. Wow. Can you explain to us about that? Yeah. And also in terms of the photos, give us a wee bit of info.
Yeah, that was my parents' memorabilia. And it went back to, you know, £1 and £1 was the membership fee that they would have paid every year. Very strict records were kept and all that. And then when the BDA became the BDA in 1971, my parents told me what happened. A bit of a story. There were two people who disagreed. That was Arthur Dimmock, and that was Mary Chester. That's my wife's mother, who were adamant that we needed to keep Dumb in the title because they thought that we would attract more funding that way because you would get the sympathy vote. Isn't that interesting? Things have changed. Things have moved on, I think in a very positive way. One more thing I'd love to add in is when I was in the youth council, then we got lottery funding through. And, you know, we worked in empowerment with young people about what they would like to see happening. And then in Scarborough in the 80s, we had a big event, and this was published.
Yeah, Young Deaf Now.
There was a second publication. And from that, young deaf people themselves became much more involved. The numbers grew quite dramatically. We had more diversity, more people coming in from different backgrounds. And the BDA board then became more representative. They went on to get involved in European Youth Federation for the Deaf. I went in and then we got involved. Then Jeff set up the European section, the Youth Council. That was Jeff and Winnie did that. And then I went in as well, and that went all over the world then after that time. Because it was so important for young deaf people to know that they had networking opportunities and their language and culture could be represented on a global scale.
Yeah, I can actually see the passion that you have for youth work now. It's so lovely. Anything else that you want to add about the celebrations for 135 years?
I want to say how much I appreciate the BDA because they funded 2 different courses that enabled me to get my degree. They got funding in from the Rank Foundation, which was to encourage inclusion to people from different backgrounds and people who would have struggled to get access. And I did a lot of volunteering in return for that. So yes, I got the funding, but I did. But the key is involve your volunteers. Volunteers are the key for the future. And work together, and we will build a stronger body as a future. And, you know, it's not about necessarily being right or wrong. Get involved, try things out. And that's what I want us to think about in the future, getting people involved.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your commitment and passion and the work that you've done for the BDA. I really hope that you'll continue with that. And I hope to see you at the future AGMs and so on. I'm sure I will see you around at many meetings to come. Yeah, it's so lovely to see you there. Thank you. Okay.
Great. So that was really interesting to get Sylvia's story. And the next person that we're going to have a chat to this evening is David Buxton. David, join us.
Hi, everyone.
Lovely to see you, David. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling okay, thank you. Yeah, working, busy as always. Thanks. How are you?
Well, thank you for your time this evening and for coming along. So just introduce yourself. Give us your name and where you're from.
Okay, I'm David Buxton, and I went to school in Morven, but I really grew up in London, and then sorry.
Now, I know you've been involved in the BDA for a long time, David, in many different roles. And first of all, we should say congratulations on your OBE, on that big award.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we'll come back on to that. But I know that you were previously involved in politics. You've always loved the whole topic, campaigns, politics. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the BSL Act, where you played a massive role, and it was such a major achievement for our community. Also, tell us about your involvement in the BDA. You were CEO, you've been chair, you've been treasurer. Give us the story.
Yeah, I have to say, I think looking back at the BSL Act and what we have now, of course, all that work we tried to do, it was probably prior to March 2001. I think the chair had left, and obviously there was a gap in the organisation there. So it's like, okay, what do we need to do? Yeah, we need to pull things together. And it was Sign Language Week. Obviously, that is a really important time for us. And I think on the 18th of March, we obviously, the government recognised BSL, but we weren't celebrating at that point. We weren't banging the drums because campaigning had to continue, because we obviously had the campaign BSL Now. So we had to shift our efforts, but we really started again. Yeah, and eventually, I think we did have some celebrations, but we did have to continue with the power of our work. If I was able to condense everything down now, I think the Act, not just myself, but everyone who was involved, deaf people who got themselves together, and we marched and done so much work to get to the Act. So we really mobilised ourselves. And altogether, I think, was there 8,000 people involved in the march and coming together, emails, communications. It wasn't a one-person effort. You know, there was so many people involved. Remember, we went to Parliament as well. And then once that day in 2022, there was so many people there, actually. I'll never forget it. I think the government really got a sense of the deaf community that day and how much we wanted that recognition and Act passed.
Absolutely. And let's show some photos of that day, or some other photos, because there was...
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I remember that.
I think you can see the passion there, David, that you're showing just where you were. And I know it was such long hours that you worked, and I can remember the phone calls, and you never seemed to stop. You were working until the wee hours of the morning, and you just seemed to be relentless. It's like in your house, the lights must always be on because you never stop working. Thank you so much for what you've achieved, because the Act is there thanks to that. And you were so supportive to me in my role as well. And the BSL Scotland. In Scotland, you were very supportive of that in terms of working through some of the detail. Very grateful to you, David, for that and for your support. And another thing I wanted to talk about is you did serve time as CEO and as chair and as treasurer. I know you're a man. Do you understand?
Yeah. I'll talk about money later, but to be honest, yeah, I was CEO. One thing that struck me was, and I'll always remember, is that I was delighted, because that first day when I arrived, it was upstairs, on the top floor. There was no desk, there was nothing there. But I think, there was a really strong team there. And I think maybe about 3 months later, I got a letter and they said, you must. So I think what they said was that, we had to pay for that. And then when I look at the videos, the archives that we got, now I remember, was it the second month I met with some people. The place was full of information, of articles, and I met with the lottery. And straight away we had a conversation, probably, over time, and they said they would give us some money to work on all that material that we had. Finally, we got that. I think it was £750,000. And that was to preserve all the film material, the footage that we had, and that we could archive that. So I think that was fantastic, actually. And then, obviously, being chair as well. And here we go. I'm going to show you this book, for the centenary. Sorry, 125 years, was it? And I have to say, I have to thank everybody that was involved in that, because we were a small core group at that time. But trying to find all that historical data, all the photographs, the footage, everything that we were able to get. We have such rich material, historic material that we now have, as a result of all the hard work. So that is a big memory of me being a CEO.
Oh, David, you've done an amazing job over all those years, being involved in policy, campaigns, financial management. It's been so helpful. Anything else you'd like to say? I know you were involved in the EUD through the BDA as well. Any final comments for us?
I think really it's important, in terms of the BDA, that we look back at 1890, at our founding members there. It's almost like, think about France. What I always remember is the journey.
Yeah, James
I'm
Paul.
trying to think of the name. Yes, thank you. Yeah, James Paul. Yeah. He established, perhaps tried to establish before that, maybe in 1883 or something, just after Milan. But I think his plans fell. They failed to materialise. But I think there was an impetus there. And I think from that, the community gained momentum, because it was almost like the BSL Act. People were tired of fighting, but we had to keep going. And that is my hope for the future. So, I don't want that momentum, that fight to dissipate. I think I want us to continue to work together, and improve lives of deaf people.
Well, David, it's fantastic to have you along. And it's also, I'm so grateful for, so appreciative of all your achievements, all the work that you've done for us. So thank you.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm trying to work out, what age I am now since I got involved in the BDA. But it's been a fantastic, I'm sure, for everyone, 135 years.
Well, thank you
all the best for the future.
this evening. Thank you for what you've had to say. You take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That was really interesting, looking at the journey that everyone's gone through. So the next person we're going to introduce, I'm sure you'll have come across this person many times throughout the BDA. We at the BDA are very lucky to have her. She has fantastic guidance and leadership, passion, and I wanted to show a little clip, at least, of some photos. There you go. Wasn't that lovely to see, Diana? Yeah, such a powerful video. Um, okay, now we have our next speaker. Let's welcome Magella.
Yeah, Avril, hi. How are you?
Hi, Magella. Nice to see you again. Thank you for coming along tonight. So let's just introduce yourself to everyone and where you're from.
I'm Magella McAteer, and I'm from Northern Ireland.
Lovely. Thank you. Oh, I see your name come up there on screen. Okay, so tell us how you got involved in the BDA. What was your journey? I know that I think you've been one of the longest serving in the BDA. Yeah, I think you were there from my day one. So tell us a bit about your journey.
Well, that's true. I've 28 years service. I think you're the second longest now, Avril.
Yeah, probably.
Absolutely. I started in 1997. There was a job advertised, and I thought I'd just go for it anyway. I was only 23, so I was only a wee young thing, and I got the job. I mean, I had to wait 2 or 3 weeks not knowing anything, and then obviously we hear about things quickly nowadays. But then they had to go round and check my references, and it was all done by post. And eventually, a few weeks later, I got offered the job. But when I first got the job, it was under the Visible Voices project. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Visible Voice, that's right. I remember that.
And there were 3 people who wrote the proposal for that. And one of them was Bob Peckford. And Bob had always campaigned for service users and service providers to talk to each other. It's visible voices, and it's how the deaf community could be empowered. And that was the project that I initially worked for. And bear in mind, I'd been to school in Dublin. I came from an ISL, Art Sign Language background.
Of course.
I went over to Doncaster and studied there for 3 years, where I picked up BSL. Came back to Northern Ireland with this job, but to be honest, the deaf community in Northern Ireland didn't actually know who I was. I walked in and nobody really knew me. I didn't know them. Day one in my job, I remember it was the 6th of June. I flew over to London, landed at the airport a bit petrified. I think it was my second time in London. And Chris Ratcliffe, who was my line manager there, such a good guy, came out to actually meet me at Gatwick Airport to guide me through to head off.
Wow. Wow.
Because we had to go underground, and I didn't know the underground. And then we got to head office, which is in Bishop Street in those days. Do you remember up on the 4th floor?
Yep, that's right, I remember.
So I stayed in a B&B for 5 days, and I remember feeling really homesick.
Oh, wow.
You know, I suddenly realized I was in a career that I hadn't been involved in or part of. Looking back, it's been such a privilege. Anyway, I came back week 2, walked into the office, and it was a shell, a tiny little box, about 6 feet by 8 feet. That's all, no furniture in it. And I can remember sitting on the floor, looking through catalogues, ordering furniture from the catalogue.
And you were on your own, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there had been a BDA branch before that, but I was the first BDA staff member in Northern Ireland in a building called Wilton House, which was incredible because all the different deaf organisations were based in one building. And directly across from my office, John Carberry was working in the RNID. And so the RNID office was right across the hall from me, and he was really supportive of me in my early days. And he, you know, I had to go out and introduce myself to the community. And honestly, now looking back, I'm so privileged to have a community I'm part of. I really love it.
Wow. So that was your journey. What, 28 years or something? So you've seen the team grow from strength to strength, I'm sure, during that time. Can you say something about your memories of that and how that developed?
So many. There were so many projects that we ended up developing. And I think in Northern Ireland, it was where we started off the Baby Talk DVD. That was one of the first. The Baby Talk DVD was where we recorded families of deaf people. And we brought in experts, professionals to look at early years and early intervention and how important that is for language acquisition. And every project's good, but I'm so proud of all the staff members who were involved and everybody I've worked with along the years. People have come and gone. Some of them haven't gone, they've stayed, but it's just been such a
So,
privilege.
yeah, turnaround of staff, of course, we all know that. Well, listen, thanks so much for getting involved tonight and for all your hard work during your time in the BDA. Do you want to say any last words before you go?
Well, what I want to see is just this morning we had a coffee morning in BDA Northern Ireland to celebrate the 135th anniversary. And the chat there was about how important it is in the future that when we get our own act, sign language act, that when you go out in the street, it used to be that people were embarrassed to use sign language and they would have discouraged it openly. It's not like that now. And in 10 years' time, I want to see everybody in the street using sign language. I want to see everybody openly happy to use sign language out there and about in society.
I want that too. Absolutely. Thank you so much. There is a comment from Caroline, and we'll display that up on screen. Carol, yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Magella, for being involved today and for continuing your work with the BDA. Yeah. I'll keep an eye on what you're doing in Northern Ireland. And thank you so much for all your support of the BDA. You've been such a loyal member of the BDA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, let's hold for a minute. We want to show a photo. Lovely. And before you go, Magella, can you give us a wee bit of explanation about that photo?
Our Belfast office was officially opened in the Belfast Waterfront Hall. You can sort of see there we have Austin Reeves, who was the chair, and then Jeff, CEO, and he is an Irishman. He's one of our guys that we lent you. So you can see it was the early, everything just getting started.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you again. Take care. Okay.
So you can see there one member of staff who's worked for all those years in the BDA. And next we're going to move on to Angela. Angela, come and join us. Lovely to see you here, Angela.
No problem. Can you just say where you're from, Angela? So, hi, I'm Angela Ansell. So when did you start getting involved in the BDA?
Ooh, I started actually, to be honest, just after I left school when I was only 18 years old. I went on a BDA youth exchange to Russia.
Oh, Russia, wow.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And when I went there, I just entered this new world that I hadn't been in. It was so intriguing. It was just an incredible experience to be in a youth exchange. I learned so much from it, and it lit a fire in me of wanting to be involved with other young people. So then I was asked to organize the next youth exchange, which was in Japan. And I organized that. I led that trip out to Japan. There were 10 deaf Japanese people. Actually, they came over here as well, and I led that when they came over. And we brought them out to visit some other local organizations. And then 1 year later, a group from here went over to Japan to learn about their culture.
Oh.
And then when we went to Japan, I organized another youth exchange to Iceland.
Nice.
And then a group from there came here. 1 year later, a group from here went out to them. So from the age of 19 to 24, I did a lot of organization of youth groups, youth exchanges. And then I was involved in EUDY, European Union, Deaf Youth Camp. I got into that because at the age of 19, to having just left school, in those days we used to watch CFAX on the TV. Do you remember? We didn't have social.
I remember that.
Facebook, so we relied on CFAX, teletext and the TV. I mean, that was my information source in those days. So I can remember clicking through, and they said they were looking for a young person to go to Portugal on the EUDY youth camp. And I thought, well, why don't I give that a go? And I can remember writing the fax and sending the fax off to the London office. And in those days, it was Jeff, who was the CEO. And he brought me in to meet him in the office. And he just told me all about his experiences about young person, telling me I absolutely had to go. So that was it. And I flew out the next week, not really knowing where I was, not really having any concept of what to expect. I just was thrown at it and off I went. And there were 3 of us from here who were British who went out. And it was an eye opener. That's where I started to learn about deaf history, about Milan in 1880s and all of that. It helped me explore my own identity as a deaf person, because as a young deaf person, I'd never heard anything about deaf history or deaf leadership or what went on. And I feel like that was a step into a brand new world for me when I understood about empowerment, about leadership, about history of deaf people and who they are, where they came from. That made me very passionate. And then I was involved in the WFD youth camp. And the European body was so small, but I wanted to get involved in even more stuff. So I went to the WFD one, which was over in Canada. And there were 4 of us who were British who went out there. And then on a global level, we were meeting, 120 people. Just the experience of all those people. 22 years ago, I still have maintained friendships from those camps. And that's part of me. And I'm so grateful to the BDA, because it was the BDA who created all those opportunities for me in the early days.
Yeah, of course. And then thereafter, you got involved in the BDA board, is that correct?
For a very short time, I did, yes. But then I got a job.
Yeah, I was going to say, how long have you been with the BDA now?
It's 10 years. 10 years.
Yeah.
I was involved at the 125-year celebrations when I was just new into my job. I was at those celebrations, and it's 10 years since, 135.
Yeah, that's such a lovely story. I think we'll have a look at some photos now and see if you look the same. How lovely. Do you recognise yourself there? I think you're in the middle, were you? Yeah, I don't think you've changed much, to be honest. Yeah, and then we've got the British Deaf flag there. So lovely. How do you feel about looking back at, comparing your time and your journey through to the BDA and now?
I mean, the time has just flown past. It really has. And I can remember when I first got involved in the BDA in 1992 in Blackpool at the Congress there. And I always feel like the BDA is just a part of me, right from school. I've always felt that. And I just want to see the BDA continue to thrive on into the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think we all want to wish everyone happy birthday. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Angela. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was fascinating. We've had a couple of members of staff who've been involved in different areas of BDA and then became staff members. You can see one 28 years, another one 10 years. So that's a long time, long years of service and commitment to the BDA. Now, before we bring in our next person, I'd like to show you something about an individual who was heavily involved in the BDA before as chair, wasn't able to make it today, but has shared some photos with us and a video. So let's see if you can see who this is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Frances Murphy, and I'm so privileged that I was asked to contribute to the BDA celebrations of 135 years today. I have been a previous chair and held various roles within the BDA, sorry. And I hope that what I'm going to say today will show how important I feel the BDA is for the deaf community. My first interaction with the BDA was back in 1992 at Blackpool. I'd been involved in the Newcastle Deaf Data Group, and we'd won a competition. And it was thanks to the branch secretary, Cynthia Iredale. She'd said to me, do you know, Francis, you need to really promote your theatre group. You need to really try and do much more and get some exposure. So it was thanks to her that I went along to Blackpool that day. And sadly, Cynthia, my apologies, died back in December of last year. So it's thanks to her, though, that I was involved. I remember another time that Peter Shaw, who'd been involved in some youth work back then, he was involved in Atlantic College and also a school leavers course for the BDA, and that was in Durham University. There's a really famous story of myself and Peter who burnt down the university. Now, I'd been working on the deaf leavers course and I had such a heavy cold that day, I just wasn't well, and Peter said, get yourself a cup of tea and go to bed. So I'd went into the kitchen to boil the kettle and I'd gone away to blow my nose. And as I returned, I could see everyone coming out of the classroom and I thought, okay, the kids are finished for the day. And somebody pointed out to me that the kitchen seemed to be on fire. There was smoke billowing from the kitchen door. So we sounded the fire alarm. The fire brigade were on their way and we went outside to gather for a while. And then I was asked to return to the building along with an interpreter to go into the kitchen. So everything was black, it was really damaged. And there was my electric kettle sitting on top of the gas cooker. Totally damaged. Oh, I was in so much trouble that day, I have to tell you. But interestingly enough, the leader of the course said, do you know what, Francis, your cold's disappeared. And he was right, I was so much better. Don't worry, I have to say, we didn't cause too much problems because the Deaf Leavers course did finish. We had a backup plan. And much later, Doug Alker asked me to get involved. I think it was about 2004, to get involved in the board. He had a fantastic vision and he wanted to ensure that BDA reflected sign language, the BDA and the BSL community. Trying to secure funding to offer services to the deaf communities. Now, we all know how difficult finances can get, and it was particularly difficult for the board during that time to try and secure funding. But we managed it, even though we had some sleepless nights. And when Doug eventually wanted to step down as chair, he asked me, along with the board, if I would take over for his term that was to finish. Now, we didn't have a CEO at that time, so I had to travel throughout the UK. I was in Belfast, I was in Glasgow and London and so on, just looking at the fabulous projects that we had established in the country. I met so many staff, also so many volunteers, and it really struck me, actually, how important the deaf, the BD's influence was. So we carried on with our work and our restructure, and I passed on the chair baton to Terry Riley. And I think, you know, throughout my time on the board, I can really understand the amount of sacrifice, amount of hard work has to go into it. And it really is thanks to so many of our staff that manage these projects throughout the country. Not just staff, but volunteers. I know I became a volunteer myself as part of a BDA mentoring project. And that was working with BDA staff from the Newcastle office, really particularly with youth work, because we realised that we needed deaf role models. We needed adults to work in the community with the young deaf people of that time. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that time. And I have to say my time at the BDA and what I've contributed is only a tiny part of the 135 years. But I'm really privileged and proud to have been able to contribute through those years. I have to say what's important is you all, everyone who's involved in the BDA, members, because without you, there would be no BDA. And when we think about our founding members and the obstacles, the barriers that they had, looking at education, awareness raising, the rights of deaf people, I think those are still as important today as they were back then, particularly BSL, equality. So from then, 1890 to now, I think those issues are still important for the BDA, and we still need you to continue to lobby and campaign and to be involved. So thank you to the BDA for 135 years of hard work, and good luck for the future. Thanks. Oh, that was lovely. So that was lovely to hear from Francis, although he couldn't make it in person today. And, you know, I do remember that time Doug, for example, being chair, and it was thanks to all their hard work. So thank you to Francis and Doug and everyone else who was involved in that. It's so lovely to see and hear all these stories of their hard work. Okay, now we've got another video, and we're going to show this video from Joseph. He unfortunately couldn't come today, so here we have Joseph. Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph Collins, and this is my sign name. So I've been involved in the BD for certainly a long time, and initially in the London office as part of a video project. And I loved filming. I loved collecting the footage, promoting that, sharing information amongst our communities. So I was involved in that for many years, and then I worked as a researcher with See Here and met lots of lovely people. I did return to the BDA just, I think, prior to Power in Our Hands, and I was supporting the research, the video work, collating that, looking through all that footage that we had, trying to identify people, record that information. And thereafter, once we were establishing Power in Our Hands, we had many visits throughout the UK at deaf clubs, at coffee mornings. We showed some of the footage that we had and hoped that some people there would recognise some people within that, maybe themselves at times or their family. And because of that, we were able to film these people, and they provided us with a wealth of rich information. I would probably say one of my favourite memories was with an elderly gentleman, Fred Cuddleford, and he was so inspiring. He had so much history to tell us about. He'd been involved in the war, World War I, and one day he'd saw the German bomber coming across the city. So that was lovely. We were able to film him, provide us with so much rich information. Sadly, he died a few years back, but he was 105 when he died. And because of him and others, we were able to have such fantastic footage, and that has been just transcribed, and it's been fantastic to have that for the BDA for posterity. So I want to thank the BDA for their 135 years and enjoy the celebrations. Thank you. And here you can see some information on Power in Our Hands and so on. That was lovely. Thank you, Joseph, for that. You know, that information about Power in Your Hands, and also for all your work with the BDA, your film work, your archiving. So that's lovely to see. It's out there for everyone to be able to be shared. Okay, now we're going to move on to Rachel. Welcome, Rachel. How are you?
Hi there.
I'm delighted you've been able to come today. If you can just tell everyone your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Rachel Bastakar, and I'm from the Derbyshire area.
Oh, lovely. Thank you for being involved with us today. I know you've been involved in the BDA through many years. Do you want to tell us how you got involved in the BDA?
It really started with the school leavers course when I was maybe 12 or 13, 1971. It was run by Margaret Moore, and they brought in some interpreters like Peter Llewellyn Jones and Rosemary and some others. And I can remember, there were these adults, really nice signing skills. And then when I was about 20, I was starting to think about what I wanted to do next. And then I approached the BDA and asked if they'd give me some money. And they gave me £500, which enabled me to get over to Gallaudet University. In that days, I couldn't get into Murray House because they told me I was too young to study social work or anything in those days. But Gallaudet at that time, the BDA also was where I went. BDA gave me that identity, that pride in my language. Before that, I think we were a bit diffident about using sign language. We fingerspelled. I came back from Gallaudet feeling much more assertive and confident that it was the BDA who helped me to not be that person who would hold back and somebody who would actually be proud of my own identity and who I was.
Wow, that's amazing. I think we have some photos of you actually. Let's show them now. Oh, lovely to see. I think you still look the same, Rachel.
47 years later, I don't know.
Wow. Yeah, so that was lovely that BD supported you to go to Gallaudet. So, can you, in terms of your involvement with the board and so on?
When I came back from Gallaudet, I got involved in a range of things, including Tyne Tees TV company, making programs for Channel 4, because they already had listening on those days with Quark, and so I was involved in that. And I used to love going into the BDA headquarters in Carlisle. I always look forward to the journey. I would go in and meet Lillian Lawson, and then I would meet Bob Peckford, who was Director of Advocacy, and I would ask questions all the time. I was also obsessed with the British Deaf News. It was the only place to go to get information about the deaf community. Do you remember interpreters used to make phone calls to social workers for us, and I loved going to headquarters. I ended up giving back to the BDA by being involved in the committee, working alongside Bob Peckford. And I went into work in the TV thinking I'd last a couple of years, but I ended up staying in Sign On. And I went for an interview, and then they asked me why I wanted to interview. I said I wanted to open the door for other deaf people to come in. And I did do that by ensuring there was ongoing training and that kind of thing.
And then you were involved in the board, is that correct?
Yes, as a rehearsal for that, I joined the FDA, Federation for Deaf People, and FDP. And I did that because, we were lobbying for sign language to be recognized, but there was a lot not happening. So the FDP was set up to support the BDA because the BDA couldn't do that really hard, lobbying work. So FDP organized marches, and in the Derby area, we had 9 coaches that all got together, brought all these people out to the marches, and we all marched.
And that was with Doug, was that correct?
And Jenny Dodds and some others, yeah. And then I was in the FDP, I was co-vice chair, and Doug really then told me that he wanted me to join the BDA. Now, I hadn't been sure about that because the BDA was a well-established, large organization with a rich heritage. And I can remember going to Doug all the time with problems, and Doug used to say to me, I don't want your problems. What are your solutions? And he really challenged me to think in a different way because Doug believed in me more than I believed in myself. I used to think in those days there was no one else to tell you that as a woman that you could do well. He was really forward thinking, way ahead of his time. So the vice chair position came up. I applied for it, but looking back, it was 1996. And at the Rossi conference, I can remember Congress being there and other young people, people thinking that I can remember looking at the BDA officers and they were all up on stage and they were all men and nobody was looked different from anybody else. And I went in, and I was the first woman then. Since then, there's been lots of women, chair, vice chair, that kind of thing. But also people from a different ethnic background weren't really there. I feel like I did open the door for other women and different women.
Absolutely.
So fingers crossed that will continue on into the future.
Yeah, you absolutely did. I think, in terms of female chair and so on, you have opened the door for other women to be involved.
Yeah, I was really nervous in myself, and Doug encouraged me to believe in myself and to have more confidence than I had naturally, because things happen. And when things happened, Doug was always very adamant that we could do it. And he used to say to me all the time, we can do this, we've got it. And he was right. He was absolutely right. And the thing is, my times didn't finish. I have a deaf son who's now in the BDA youth, and I will always continue to give back to the BDA. I got so much from the BDA, and I really want the BDA to continue. 135th anniversary. I was there at the Leeds Congress there recently, and there was a problem with my tire. My tire burst, and then the police came out and helped me drive over to Leeds and had everything ready for filming. When I arrived with the police, there were all these rumors that I'd been arrested, but actually they were helping me, and I was going into film. And it's 135 years now. I can't believe that. 15 years time, it'll be the 150th anniversary. Time has just flown.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. That's been amazing. What an opportunity you had. You had to grab that, I think, with both hands. Yeah, and of course we know Doug, so famous for the BDA and what he did to take us forward. So yeah, thank you to everyone involved, and thank you to you for opening the doors for other women to get involved in the BDA. Thank you for your time and your contribution and all your hard work. If there's any last words you'd like to say?
The BDA is now 135 years old, and there are other organizations such as the Salvation Army that are the same age. And the BDA itself will only survive if we as members put the hard work in to feed and water and nourish this organization that we love. We all must continue to do that. Let's all work together and make sure that BDA carries on for 135 years more plus.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind words.
Happy birthday, BDA, 135 years old.
Thank you. Hope to see you around, Rachel. Take care.
That was lovely closing words there. And I hope that you as a community do continue to support us, and we will continue to support you. I mean, that was so good from Rachel. Now I'd like to introduce Gloria. Gloria, will you join us?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, Gloria, it's lovely to see you along. Thank you for taking the time out to join us tonight. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
My name's Gloria Pullen, and this is my sign name. And I've travelled around a bit, but I'm really from Bristol, and I moved to Derbyshire where I stay now. I think the BD know me well. I've grown up in a deaf family, so yeah, I've been around for a while.
And how did you first get involved? Any early memories?
Well, I'll tell you a wee secret story, actually. When I was about 16, I got my first wage from work, actually. And it was only £4 a week, yeah. But I was so excited. And it was a Saturday night. I was going to a deaf club. And my grandfather at that time had been involved in the BDA. And he said, come here, you need to get involved. And I said, oh, I can't afford it. Yeah, I can't afford it. But, I really wanted to get involved with the BD. I did. My mother and father had explained to me, listen, if you want to go, you're young. She wants to go out and party. She doesn't want to go to the BDDA at the time. But the BDA at that time had invited me to go along and give a talk at Torquay. And I was a bit nervous, actually, because there would be a lot of deaf people there. And I was new, really, so I was really nervous. So I arrived in Torquay and I was chatting to other deaf people. And of course, they knew me, they knew my family. And people were saying hello to me. They knew my mum, and everybody else was there. That some people I recognised, some not. And then I was so nervous to give a talk, but of course I had to do it. So I went up, did my thing. I talked about work and what I wanted to do and so on. And next to me was Clark. And I think prior to that, there was a lot. People were finger spelling. We were using BSL at that time, but I'd never really thought about too much of it.
Oh,
And Doc Mills was there, yeah. And her sign language so beautiful, yeah. And what they said was, Doc Mills was so fantastic, and you have to go and meet other people and think about what you want to do. So I thought it was really interesting. But at the same time, there was a new chair. So there was a bit of a debate against whether it should be deaf person, hearing person. And finally, we were voting. And Jock was the winner. He actually was the first deaf chair of the BDA, which was so lovely. It was so inspiring to have been involved in the BDA at that time. I went back to my normal life, back to work. And I was really lucky though, because I wanted to continue my involvement, and I got involved with the board. Apologies that there is some freezing on screen at the moment.
I went on the board, and I was the only woman on the board. They were all men. And I always remember that it was interesting being part of the board, though, because there were so many challenges, and I learned a lot from that. And then I was put on the council, and then Jock asked if I would go with him to a European meeting. And I took that on board, and Jock and I were the first group to set up the EUD. That first meeting of the EUD was held in London, and people came from all over Europe, from Greece, from Germany, from France, all over the place. It wasn't an easy task because there was a language barrier. Because in those days, people hadn't really started using international sign. It's about 40 years ago. So people were using their own sign language, and it was harder, and the meetings took forever. They went on till really late at night. But eventually we got there, started chatting, and then the BDA actually funded the EUD to get established. And without that funding, where would we be nowadays? So they did a really important job. They achieved so much. And I always remember the HIV project that they set up as well. They went in the early days and set up training when nobody else was doing that. It was crucial. And I'm so proud of my involvement in the BDA because they've achieved so much over the years. I actually had 2 stints on the board. Obviously, you only have a tour, and then I went off to Uganda for a while. So a couple of years out there. So I took some time out, and then I came back, and then I went to BDA again. And then there were some problems, and I went in to try and help out just for a short time. But what I see now, what I saw last Saturday in Leeds at the 135th anniversary celebrations, what I saw was just amazing. It was magical, if I'm honest. Inspirational. I was so inspired by what I saw last Saturday. All those young people. I am so proud of seeing that. And I think, there were a couple of young people, and Rebecca was interviewing them and asking them what they were there for. Their moment was just fabulous. And those 2 young people are going to change the world. I think they were incredible. And I think the BDA should be very proud of them. They are our future.
Absolutely.
I suppose what I feel like now is, without the BDA, where would we all be? And I'm so grateful to Francis McGinn for the work that he did in setting up the British Deaf and Dumb Association.
Oh, thank you so much, Gloria, for explaining that journey, your time in the BDA. I know that you never miss conferences. You love to go to meetings, to talk to everyone, and share your wisdom and your experiences. So thank you so much. I mean, when you think about, the community, I think you've done so much work in empowering them and supporting them. So thank you.
One more thing is I want to say that I really appreciate the amount of strategic work that the BDA is in terms of looking to the future. And what I would like to see happening is something specifically for older deaf people. I don't think enough's been done about that. I think those deaf people who are an aging population often don't have anywhere to go in their later years. And, they're stuck out there in mainstream care homes or whatever. And I think there needs to be a strategic direction around caring for older deaf people.
Yeah, I agree. That's really important, actually. And I think what you're able to contribute as well is fantastic. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Take care.
You're so welcome. And I just hope that in the future, the BDA will work together as a team, because it's the only organization that's fully deaf-led. The board are all deaf. The chief executive is deaf, and you can see that we lead the organization. So that's why I'm so proud of the BDA. 135th anniversary. Well done. Congratulations. There's a lot ahead, but well done to all the staff and everybody else who's currently involved.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much for your time. That's been lovely. Take care. Lovely. Oh, that was lovely to speak to Gloria there, and to give us her experience. She's been such a supportive person through the BDA, and our own journey over 135 years. Okay, we're at our last speaker now. We have Wendy with us.
Oh, it's lovely to see you. Nice to have two great parties. The conference just there, which was fantastic. And today is a birthday party for the BDA. They're 135th, and it's been lovely. And in Derby today, we've had our own celebrations. We've had a wonderful cake, and I have loved it all. It's just
so. This is your third event today. What?
Yeah, I may have a bit of cake still hidden away.
It's lovely to see you, Wendy. I know you've been involved in so many things, the same as our just previous speaker, Gloria. Can you let us know? Are you from Derby? Yeah, you're based in Derby. Where are you living about?
Originally Birmingham.
Ah.
And that started because I actually lifted a picture off the wall to show you, and I'd forgotten about it. What happened was I was teaching sign language to 300 police cadets who were training to become police officers. And in those days, we used total communication. It wasn't BSL at all. It was TC, total communication. So I lifted this off the wall. I thought, I'll just dust the top of it since it's come off the wall. There you go. You see that?
Yeah, I recognise that.
And that's a picture from those days. And the BDA contacted me and asked me to go over to Carlisle to provide some training for their staff in sign language in Carlisle. Oh, I love that. I felt like that Carlisle office felt like a second home to me. It really did.
Oh, lovely.
So comfortable because everybody there was so lovely and welcoming. And the staff in those days knew every member by name. They knew about me, about my family, everything. They knew us really individually. It was a very personal connection.
Yeah, very close-knit community. And so obviously you've talking about the Carlisle office. Yeah, tell us more about that. What about what you remember about the money? Yeah.
Money. Well, I think things were different then from they would be nowadays. The world is a very different place. But the staff in the BDA office, you had Billy Burt.
Billy Burt, yeah.
Billy Burt. And he told me some stories. He said that on Friday evenings, when everybody got their wages, No, it wasn't monthly the way it is now. It didn't go via the, it didn't go via the bank. It came in a brown envelope. And just before that, they would go put those envelopes. I think it must have been, those little envelopes that you raised money in to support the BDA. They would go around the streets, and Billy Burt was responsible for certain streets, and they would go around the streets and fundraise. And on a Friday evening, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, they would go into the BDA office. And the BDA office, furniture, the floors were stunning, proper polished wood, not like the cheap stuff nowadays. There's no IKEA furniture, beautiful polished wooden floors. So the deaf people used to empty those little fundraising envelopes and take the cash out, and they were coins. And I can remember seeing the coins taken out of the envelopes, and they would go in, and it looked as if you had so much money, because they would put the coins up the way and then down the way just to add them all up so they could count them easily. And there was one time that they had a problem because they got no money, because this woman had put, instead of putting coins in, she'd put buttons in. And he said that wasn't very useful, it wasn't very helpful. And I can remember after, he was really bad mood because there'd been buttons in that little envelope.
Yeah, I'm sure getting along to the woman's door saying, where is the money you were going to deposit into this envelope?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, what continued your work with the BDA? What happened?
I feel as if the BDA kept dragging me in, to be honest. I went in to teach the staff sign language. We started at level 1, worked our way up.
Were you involving in filming as well, Wendy? Were you involved in that?
Yes. Carr's Biscuit Factory. The BDA went in to film in Carr's Biscuit Factory. In manpower service, do you remember under the government, there was a manpower service, and they asked me to go in there and provide some training. And we went in the ground floor where all the women were working with the white nets on. And I had to walk through this area where all the biscuits were going past on the conveyor belts. And then they were taking the brown stuff away from upstairs and moving things around. And then Peter Shaw and David Fowler and Irene Hall were in there recording. And Dot Miles was part of it too. I worked with her for 2 years. There was some kind of project about the Ladybird books. Do you remember the little Ladybird books? Children.
Yeah, the children's books.
So Dot wanted me to go and sign some of those stories. The project was called See and Say Signs. Must have been 1978 or maybe 1980, around then. So I went in and signed, and Dot told me off and said, your signs aren't right. You have to be a bit more English. And I was just thinking of children watching the way I was signing. Because if I signed it word for word, then it wouldn't have worked. And I think Dot hadn't had that experience. So she had just arrived back from America, and she'd done more ASL, which is a bit more literal, a bit more English-based in terms of the order. And I was wanting to do BSL. And at that time, we didn't use the term BSL. That wasn't a term that we used. She wanted me to follow the English more. And if I look back at those videos now, I'd be horrified because of what she made me do, because she made me follow them in English word order. Horrendous.
Wow. So were you involved in the BD board at that time?
Yes, for 6 years.
I think there's a comment came up from our audience member, and we'll put that up on screen, from Stuart Parkinson.
Stuart.
Oh, so I'll just, sign that for our audience. Yeah, he obviously loved getting to know you well.
And I did meet Stuart recently, and it was lovely to see him again. I think being part of the BDA in those days, I could see that, people who worked in there, like Norma, Arthur Verney, Bob Peckford, they worked because of their passion. You know, they worked from the heart and they worked 24/7. And that passion was instilled in me. And I've gone on to have that 24/7 as well. And I hope that
Yeah.
continues. I'll always have that passion.
Yeah. Carry on, it's okay.
I wanted to say about Billy Burt because the way he signed was gorgeous. It was so pure in terms of the way he produced it. And our office, the BDA offices were like a rabbit warren. You could never find anything. Corridors, beautiful old buildings, small offices. And he worked downstairs. It was the post room. It was where the BDA was posted, and there were thousands of letters coming and going in the post room. And I remember going in, and one day it was a bit quieter, and seeing the top of his head. He was bald, so it was a flat head, and he was reading a ladybird book. And then he would get the next one and read them all. And I said, Bert, what are you doing? He said, when I was at school, I was never taught. My parents never taught me. I never got these videos. So because he was watching the videos, he was starting to read these ladybird books. And I remember him then signing the Pied Piper and See Here. And a lot of people remember how beautifully he signed some of those stories, but that was from those books. Then Irene Hall, who used to write for the British Deaf News, she was the editor. And she had another job. As I said, people work 24/7. She used to write scripts for those who were recording these videos. And we would have signed lots of things to camera, but Irene put the scripts together, gave them to me and Clark. Clark and I came in and we signed them. And one of them was, what is BSL? And that video was put out amongst everybody. And I always remember the reaction of deaf people was shock to discover that deaf people was an actual language and that what we were producing was something of value. And that video actually went everywhere. It went global.
Yeah, I remember that actually. Yeah. Here's some photos of you, Wendy. How lovely. Yeah? You look so young in one of those
One
photos.
over at the left, that's me doing my SSE signing. Oh, awful.
Yeah, how lovely though. Yeah, but well done. Well done for all those achievements and for those improvements from your SSE, absolutely.
I know, and I have different awards here up on the wall over the years. I have a silver plate as well. I keep in the box because I didn't want to have to keep polishing it, so I keep it in the box.
Absolutely. So can I ask you before we close, is there anything you want to say to the BDA on their celebrations of 135 years?
Happy birthday, BDA. That's the biggest thing I want to say.
Is that the last thing? Yeah.
And the last word would be, the BDA has given me a fantastic life. And if it hadn't been for the BDA over the years, I wouldn't be here the way I am now. My life would have gone down a very different path. I've had a fantastic life, and I'm so lucky to have had the BDA in my life, dragging me in so many times.
But we're lucky to have you as well.
And what I want to ask is for young people, get involved in the BDA, and your future and your life will be as wonderful as mine has been. And I really hope that the BDA will continue with young people. Come on, guys, those of you who are younger, it is your responsibility to take this on. And you will enjoy it. You will.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks so much.
One more thing. I do hope that the BDA will look into keeping deaf schools open. Fight for that. We need to keep deaf schools open.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for your wisdom, for sharing that with us tonight, for everything that you've achieved throughout your tenure with BD. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks again for your time, Wendy, and for your lovely stories. Take care.
and sending you all my love.
Ah, that's so lovely. Same back to you, Wendy. Take care. Bye for now. Okay, so there we are. We've went through over time, but we've had some fantastic speakers. And I hope you've enjoyed everyone who's come along and talked about their own experiences, whether that's from the London office or the Carlisle office. And we thought we'd show you some photos of our offices right now. So there we go. You saw Carlisle office there where our staff have worked. It's been mentioned tonight, and also our London office as well. In Worship Street. So yeah, the BDA was on the corner there and was several floors high. So yeah, I think we've all been around the country in the various offices. Now, before we finish tonight, I just wanted to thank everyone for their contribution, for their stories. I think it's all part of our fantastic jigsaw. Each and every one of you bring together a piece of that jigsaw to the 135 years to give us that full picture. So it's so nice to be able to enjoy and celebrate 135 years with you all tonight, and to look back over those historic memories that people have shared with us. So I think we need to toast the BDA on 135 years on their birthday. And I hope that you'll continue to be involved with us for many years to come. So thank you so much for watching. And the last thing to say, in terms of a toast, maybe you go home yourself this evening and you look through the old magazines. We thought we'd show you some before you leave tonight. You might remember some of these. There we go. So let's go home and have a look, maybe in your attic, maybe in your spare room. You've got boxes of the magazines, and you can remember all those stories that were shared in those publications, and try and keep those stories going with friends and family. Yeah. So thank you again so much. Thank you all for watching tonight. So appreciate it. Take care, and happy birthday, BDA, to 135 years and many more. Bye for now.